Habibi Derek. Hello, everybody. This is Masood Allah's narrative, and I've got a message for Habibi Derek. I pray that God blesses you with eternal life, peace upon those who follow the guidance of God, the Lord of Heaven's armies. Dear Derek, more of your work only increases my confidence and faith. It is a good thing that you're bringing all the experts to give them the platform they deserve, but when they are exhausted, the Quran will prevail. Like the magicians assembled on the stage, and Moses who prevailed by the strong arm of God. I emphasize that the Quran is a guardian text, and as such, it is calling to be dealt with. Its nature is foolproof, as it says in verse 41-42, it is immune from falsehood from all sides, and it stands sealed against it, a cable from the wise with a strong arm and the praiseworthy, one of a kind exemplary. So let's begin the story of Adam and Eve. In Surah 2, verses 30 to 33, it narrates, O Muhammad, behold, your Lord said to the angels, Indeed, I am to create an apex species as my representative on earth. They replied, Are you going to create a kind who is malevolent and unsympathetic to shed blood? We are here, ever present, to praise you, glorify your name, further extol your holiness. He said, Sure, I'm savvy for things which you do not know. Thus he taught Adam the nomenclature of all things on the display, and had the angels take their turn, and said, Inform me of their definitions if you truly know. The angels pleaded. They replied, Glory be to you. We do not have the knowledge except for what you have taught us. Indeed, you are intelligent and wise. Then he said, O Adam, describe the binomial nomenclature thereof. Behold, when he displayed his intellect by presenting an overview of the living and the non-living objects, God said, Indeed, I perceive the unseen of the skies and earth, and I know of your speech and the secrets you hide. So, in the very beginning, the angels pinpointed the cruel animal behavior, which they thought was against the values of a loving God for his acting representative to have. But what these robotic creatures, the angels, failed to perceive was the greater empathy which animal creatures can emulate and sustain. It is a hard pick for proponents of the problem of evil to justify when asked whether they consider the existence as an embodiment of shimmering beauty or just callous cruelty. Look, the nature of terminal pain and suffering is momentary or transitory, but the beauty and brilliance found in the nature is permanent and pervasive. The problem of evil, as perceived by the angels in a discussion with God, is a short sight, especially for the power of God to undo the pain as taught in the Quran, verse 2 260. The salient point is the love that animals share in exuberance to defeat the odds. This corresponds to the savvy nature of God to realize greater good in his kingdom. That's the salient point. Therefore, God does not hesitate to scrap the malevolent kind into the dungeons of hell as a test laced for humankind and jinn. And he blesses the qualifiers into a blissful state, which he calls Eden, or a delightful garden, where he is eager to give them love as taught in the Quran, verse 1996. The story of Adam and Eve has a different dimension. Here it narrates in Surah 20, verses 115 to 122. In the beginning, we made an agreement with Adam, but he soon forgot and lacked determination. At Adam's creation, we commanded the angels to prostrate, and they obeyed, except for the devil, Iblis, who refused, who is of the jinn. We said, O Adam, he is indeed your enemy and the enemy of your partner, so do not let yourselves be tempted out of the garden, or you will suffer. You have plentiful food and do not need clothing. You will not feel thirsty or suffer from the scorching sun. So, those were the things, and that was the state, the sempiternal state in which Adam lived. Then the devil whispered to Adam, O Adam, I can guide you to the tree of eternity and an everlasting kingdom. So they both ate from it, and their nakedness became apparent. They took leaves from the garden to cover themselves. Adam disobeyed his Lord and went astray. The devil made them slip from the command and got them both out of the sempiternal state they had previously lived in. And we said, Now go out to now go out to live yourselves as enemies to each other. And here on earth for you there is residence and a means of subsistence for a time. Later, Adam received words from his Lord, and he repented for his mistake. Indeed, he is a Redeemer, sharp to relent, and merciful, abounding in steadfast love. The sempiternal state is the state of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Delight on earth, where they were basically looked after in an area in the regions bordering Armenia and Anatolia, as you can see on this map. This state of living meant that they hadn't discovered or weren't cognizant about their sexuality and lived in sexual innocence, if that makes sense, until they ventured out against the limits of God to eat from the nettle tree, which induced the chemistry for sexual awareness as taught in the verse of the Quran 53:14, which is also meant to induce sexuality to the inmates of Paradise planet when we get there after being resurrected and the earth is doomed. I postulate that God began the creation of Adam from clay sourced from the Black Sea as taught in the verse 1526 and verse 1886, and created Eve from the germ cells resulting from Adam. And they both grew up to be adults in innocence, sexual innocence. But after the chemistry of sexuality was induced due to ingesting the nettle, they began covering their shame by the leaves from the garden, and thus had to walk out of the sempiternal state to live on their own and work. If you were wondering about Eve's creation from the rib of Adam, let me tell you that it is a misrepresentation of the texts. which the ancient cultures, such as the Sumerians, due to their lack of understanding of earlier learnings they had from Noah's time period, inferred to be the case about Eve's origins from Adam's rib, which the Bible writers during their golden age after Solomon's death in the Holy Land, in the Promised Land where they settled, in the new founded priestly hierarchy which they came up with, provided the scriptures with mythological fillps found in the cultures surrounding them. Unlike unlike the theory, the lure that Derek is caught into, that the Israelite scribes wrote the Bible in the Hellenistic period, which is much later to their um, captivity in Babylonia. Okay. Prophet Abraham's rise around 2000 BCE marks the downfall of the Sumerian Empire and the rise of Egyptian Empire. These stories have found their way not just into the Egyptian culture, but others too, and have left their impressions with Israelite scribes writing the scriptures. The Holy Quran covers the Bible writings as a guardian text. Therefore, the Quran needs to be dealt with to falsify the God of Abraham. And that's a salient point the Quran makes crystal clear. The Quran is an ultimate authoritative text that clarifies the tampering of these original stories by ancient cultures. Refer to the Quran verse, chapter 9, verse 30. As such, a forerunner of the Quran verse of the chapter 86:7 reads, "The germ cell is extracted from the organelles between the loins and the ribcage." And this verse, with the ancients, when they had the teachings, the instruction of God, became subject to the idea of being born out of the rib in ancient cultures. In their rudimentary understanding of origins of Eve, the ancients missed the important bits of the original instruction, and the external testes and internal seminal vesicles are in the loin area or the pelvis. The liver, more prominently from the ribcage, supports overall productivity, health, and hormonal balance of a human being. This way, it indirectly contributes to the fertilization potential of a human. So, the verse of the Quran 86:7, that the germ cell is extracted from the organelles between the loins and the ribcage, has the fuller instruction which in the ancient world, due to the absence of a woman to man, which is Adam, who was Adam, the ancients totally missed it. They missed the point, and they came up with this theory that Eve was extracted from the rib of Adam. Right? Hilarious. With Adam developing from the earth's chamber at the banks of the Black Sea, as inferred from the teachings from within the Quran, during early embryonic development around week 3 and 4, after formation via chemical synthesis from the earth, the cells in the developing embryo undergo a process called germ cell specification or germ cell determination. These specified cells migrate to the developing gonads, testes in males or ovaries in females, and further differentiate into primordial germ cells. It is during fetal development that primordial germ cells undergo complex processes such as migration, proliferation, and differentiation, ultimately giving rise to mature sperm or egg cells. This process occurs later in development, typically during the second trimester of the pregnancy. This way, Eve was extracted from Adam and her embryo grew at the banks of the Black Sea, like every other species that God originated, without implying that they all came from the Black Sea. I'm not saying that. Black Sea was the site of birth for Adam and Eve in particular. The theme here is in the Quran, the theme the theme really here is in the Quran is a logical the Quran presents itself as a logical hurdle for academics in the Middle Eastern studies who compare mythologies of the ancient world to tally the tales in the volume of the Bible, to question origins of stories canonized in the Bible. There are no doubt parallels in Sumerian archaeological findings preserved on clay tablets. The studies show matching characters to the themes in the story of Adam and Eve and the two sons with their sacrifices. In the book of Genesis, I mean, chapter 4, verse 1 to 16, in the book of Genesis, it is undeniable that Bible writers have borrowed mythologies under the influence of the ancient world and have supplied it to become the in between text into the scriptures. Such scribal traits of mimesis continue to haunt the Gospels, tracing the fuller volume of the Bible from beginning until the end as vulnerable, as pointed out by Dennis R. MacDonald in his Mimesis of the Gospels, whom Derek hosted on his channel. He compares an account of Jesus' arrest, trial, and subsequent death to the mythologizing of Hector found in Elia 22 and 24 in the resurrection narrative of Jesus Christ. Let's look into the story of Cain and Abel as comes in the Quran chapter 5 verses 27 to 31. It narrates, O Muhammad, convey to them the truth about the story of the two sons of Adam. When they both presented their sacrifices, one was accepted and the other was not. The one whose sacrifice was not accepted said to his brother, I will kill you. His brother replied, God only accepts from those who are righteous. If you try to kill me, I will not retaliate for I fear God, the Lord of all worlds. But let the burden of both my sin and yours rest upon you, and you will thus be of the camp of fire, a fitting retribution for the wrongdoers. So, driven by vigor, he went on to kill his brother and thus became one of the losers. Then God sent a crow to scratch the ground and show him how to bury the shame of his brother. He was filled with remorse and said, Misery! I'm even less able than this crow to conceal the evil I've done to my brother, and he felt deep regret. The story told about Cain in the Bible goes like this. In the Bible, Cain was a farmer and presented agricultural produce as his gift to the Lord, which Derek calls as a veggie platter. Whereas Abel, a herdsman, presented a lamb, and Derek calls it a juicy lamb. God approves of the lamb, and Cain kills Abel in envy. Therefore, God cursed the land of Cain and forced him into exile. Unlike the borrowed Sumerian folklore, which is rogue, reflexive, and human like, the Quranic narrative, by avoidance of mimesis, excels in sophistication, and is logical and benign. Importantly, it elucidates the intended instruction to humanity by having a smart bird come and demonstrate the burial to Cain, authoritatively communicating that a crow derives logical conclusions, as we have seen the bird to demonstrate the sense to wait for traffic lights to go red to grab a mouthful that lay in the middle of the road, and several other intelligence it uses, as shown in the slide here. In the biblical story, one may question the traits of the brothers and the count of individuals they were required to feed as a first human family, and what would be the meaning of the land being cursed and Cain being sent into exile, and its implications over the security of the dependents while Abel was dead. There were unlimited chances for Muhammad or the Arabs, if they played their part in writing the Quran like the Bible writers, to err and to be fallible. But the Quran is rendered foolproof. If the claims of the skeptics and critics are true, that the Bible writers borrowed these stories upon the cultural exchanges during their Babylonian captivity in 6th century BCE, then my obvious objection is, where is the parallel for the magnificent story of Joseph and his brotherly rivalry which led him to be exiled or taken away on a caravan sold as a slave into Egypt? Where is the parallel for this story? This historically antecedent story to the event of Babylonian captivity of the Israelites is even more captivating than the Abel and Cain story, if you were to give your thought. So, what is the source of this captivating, magnificent story? If you have found no reason, then bear this in the mind, that the radical stories of the first human family make up a common thread to all nations, unlike Joseph, who falls under Abraham. The nations, the people who deboarded after being ferried on the Ark of Noah, to them, the radical stories of Adam and Eve and Abel and Cain were a common thread, who went their ways after being ferried in the ship of Noah. The Sumerians, as we've seen in this map, found the closest home of everyone else from the borders of Anatolia and Armenia into the land of the great rivers and tributaries, Sumer, modern day Iraq, and as such retained those memories stronger than any other nation who drifted further away, facing the dangers of new lands and etching new memories in the process. Look, the dangers of the land and the sea became natural barriers for how further away those stories could be comported with fewer individuals who set off in all possible directions on planet Earth. These are the limits that define global humanity, and yet we are one species relating to the Creator agency, whom the ancients ascribed as the Great Spirit, someone who's bigger than us. The ontology of the Spirit, however, as comes in the Quran, is classed as an enigma that brims with incomprehensible powers, that which flows only with the command of Almighty God, the host of heavenly armies. The Holy Quran covers the Bible, as I'm emphasizing time and again, including in my previous videos, that the Quran emphatically covers the Bible writings as a guardian text. There is no bypassing this proclamation of the Quran. Therefore, the Quran needs to be dealt with to falsify the God of Abraham and the biblical impetus. The Quran, as an ultimate authoritative text, clarifies the tampering of these original stories by ancient cultures. Refer to the Quran verse chapter 9 verse 30. Again, the analogy that I gave you in my earlier videos, the analogy of striking the head with a detrimental blow instead of striking the arm applies. And the Bible is that arm, and the Quran is that head. So strike if you can. So I welcome you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell button to know when I'm live, and you can join in for a live conversation. I would be happy to host Derek's viewers on my channel to be more interactive with them, to take the questions and prod their learning that they are making on Derek's channel. And I welcome Derek himself to discuss these subject matters. I'll be happy to do that with Derek, and spread the word, have Derek talk to me, and let us all make it interesting and a learning experience. So see you in the next video. Until then, bye.